I'm Jordan Miller, a logistics manager who moves millions in freight. But I didn't see my own family hijacking my life. I stood in my Chicago penthouse, clutching a drink as blue balloons drifted like a mockery of my hard work. My sister Becca raised her glass, her hand on her pregnant belly, and shouted, "To Jordan, for gifting this $1,200,000 home to my baby's trust today." The room froze, and I felt my blood turn to ice as the guests erupted into applause I never authorized. My mother, Linda, grabbed my arm, whispering sharply, "Just smile. Jordan, it's for the family. You have enough anyway." I pulled back, my voice a low, lethal blade that cut the music. I didn't sign a single thing. Mom, and this isn't a gift. It's a hallucination. Becca's face contorted, her theatrical vulnerability vanishing in a heartbeat. The digital deed says otherwise. So stop being a selfish bitch for once, she hissed, leaning into her boyfriend Kyle. Kyle adjusted his cheap tie, smirking with the arrogance of a man who'd already spent my money. "It's all notarized and filed. Jordan, so maybe your memory is failing while your bank account is growing," he mocked. I looked at them, noting the way Kyle's eyes flicked to my laptop on the desk. "You used my digital key while I was in Singapore, didn't you, Mom?" I asked, the betrayal tasting like copper in my mouth. Linda didn't flinch. She just straightened her coat and said, "We saved the family from your father's $195,000 debt. You should be thanking us for the legacy." I stepped into the center of the room, staring down the sister who wanted my life without working a day for it. "Get every single person out of my house before I call the CPD and turn this party into a felony scene," I commanded. Becca laughed. A sharp, ugly sound that echoed off the marble floors I paid for. "It's not your house anymore, Jordan. Check the records if you don't believe your own signature." I felt a vibration in my pocket, a silent alert from my office security. I pulled out my phone, seeing a note from my assistant Casey. "Found it. The IP address used for the transfer was your home Wi-Fi while you were at 35000 feet." I looked up, a cold, calculated smile finally touching my lips. "You think you're clever, but you've just left a digital paper trail straight to a prison cell," I told them. The game was on, and they had no idea I was the one holding the map. "Toik sin loi visu thiu so, trong via kiem swat so luang te fun truk. Toi dadiu ching lai de dam bao do, dai ching sak 450 ton su. Giu, dung ku truk, doan van, kong qua, for kau va long, gip doi twai truk tiep theo, tile yuku." I locked my office door, the blue balloons outside now looking like evidence markers in a crime scene. I didn't need a therapist. I needed an audit. So I called my assistant Casey to track the $195,000 I'd sent home for taxes. "Jordan, I tracked the wire transfer you sent to your parents last spring," Casey said, her voice dropping an octave. "It never touched the IRS. It went straight to a marine dealership for a boat named Liberty and a gambling offshore account." I closed my eyes, the betrayal hitting me with the weight of a shipping container. "Who is the registered owner of the gambling account?" "Casey?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Kyle Miller. Your sister's boyfriend," she confirmed. A heavy silence filled the line before Casey spoke again, her typing speed increasing. "About that digital deed transfer for your penthouse. The IP address matches your home Wi-Fi while you were on that flight to Singapore." I gripped my desk, my knuckles turning white. "And the two-factor authentication?" I pressed. "It was sent to your mother's backup recovery phone. The one you bought her for emergencies," Casey whispered. I let out a sharp, jagged breath. "So Linda used my own gift to rob me at 35000 feet," I said, Check the notary on that deed. Casey. I bet it's a name I know. It's Grant Higgins, she replied instantly. He was Kyle's partner at the brokerage before they both got flagged for predatory lending. I hung up and stared at the door as my father Robert hammered on the wood. Jordan. Stop hiding behind your spreadsheets and come out here to celebrate your niece, he bellowed. I opened the door just an inch. My face a mask of cold logistics. Does the Liberty have a comfortable cabin? Dad? Because $195,000 is a lot of money to spend on a boat when you told me the house was being seized? I said. He flinched, his face turning a sickly shade of gray. We were going to tell you. But Becca needed the win. Jordan? She's fragile right now, he stammered. I pushed past him and met Marcus, my attorney. At a diner 10 minutes later, he threw the folder of bank statements on the table and shook his head. This isn't just a family feud. Jordan. It's a federal case if you want it to be, Marcus said. I leaned in, my voice a low, focused hum. I want the house back and Kyle's broker license burned to the ground, I stated. Marcus smirked, tapping the forged notary stamp. If Grant talks to avoid jail, he'll bury Kyle and your mother in 10 minutes, he promised. I nodded, feeling the cold machine of justice start to turn. Tell him I'm not looking for an apology. I'm looking for a total recovery of assets, I said. Let them keep their secrets. I'll keep the deed. I invited them to a high-end steakhouse downtown, the kind of place where the wine list is longer than a logistics manifesto. As the waiter approached, I swapped the menus for leather-bound folders containing the bank records Casey had unearthed. I thought we should discuss the family legacy over something substantial, I said, sliding a folder toward my father. Robert opened it, his face draining of color as he saw the $195,000 wire transfer highlighted in neon yellow. Jordan. This isn't the time for an audit. We're here to celebrate your sister, he stammered, his hands shaking against the linen tablecloth. I leaned forward, my voice a quiet razor. You're right, Dad. Let's celebrate the Liberty. The boat you bought with the money I thought was saving our family home. Linda gasped, clutching her pearls with a theatrical flair that made me want to laugh. We only took what was necessary to keep your father's spirits up during the crisis. Jordan, you have so much more than us, she cried. I turned to her, my expression as cold as the ice in my scotch. You didn't take it, Mom. You stole it using my digital signature while I was over the Pacific, I countered. Becca slammed her hand on the table, her eyes darting toward the other patrons. You're making a scene because you're jealous of my baby and this penthouse, she hissed. I smiled. A jagged, mirthless thing that didn't reach my eyes. Jealous of a fraud. Becca, I'm the one who paid for every square inch of that marble you're currently squatting on, I replied. Kyle tried to cut in, his voice oily with unearned confidence. The deed is filed and legal. Jordan. So these bank statements are just historical trivia now, he mocked. I tapped the folder in front of him, specifically the page with the notary's name. Does Grant Higgins still have that offshore gambling account? Kyle. Or did he spend my money as fast as you did? I asked. Kyle's smirk vanished, replaced by a twitch in his jaw that signaled the first crack in his armor. I don't know what you're talking about. And Grant is a respected professional. He lied, though his eyes betrayed him. I stood up, smoothing my blazer with slow, deliberate movements. He's a felon in waiting. Just like the rest of you if this house isn't back in my name by Monday, I stated. The table fell into a suffocating silence as the realization of my consultant-style ruthlessness finally sank in. Robert looked at the floor, unable to meet my gaze, while Linda's tears turned from fake grief to genuine panic. You wouldn't actually sue your own flesh and blood. Would you? She whispered, her voice trembling. I picked up my clutch, looking at her as if she were a defective shipment. Family is a contract based on trust. And you breached it the moment you touched my computer, I said. Becca reached for my hand, but I stepped back. Out of her reach. Enjoy the steak. It's the last thing I'll ever pay for in this family, I concluded, leaving them with the check and the truth. As I walked out, I felt the first real spark of the fire I was about to rain down on them. By Tuesday morning, the pressure began to cook them from the inside out. Exactly as I'd calculated. I stood in Marcus's office as he filed the lis pendens, a legal stay of execution that froze my penthouse in place. The property is officially toxic. Jordan. Kyle couldn't sell a brick of it now if he tried, Marcus said. Clicking the final submission button, I watched the confirmation screen, feeling the noose tighten. Good. Now, let's make sure his professional life is just as stagnant as that deed, I replied. I spent the afternoon forwarding the forged notary files and bank trails to the National Association of Realtors. The first crack in their foundation appeared when Becca called me, her voice hysterical and lacking its usual theatrical polish. Jordan. The bank just froze the line of credit Kyle opened against the house. And he's packing a bag, she screamed. I adjusted my headset, my eyes fixed on a logistics chart. Sounds like your knight in shining armor is looking for an exit ramp. Becca, I said. Maybe you should ask him where that $195,000 went before he disappears into the night. Becca sobbed, a raw sound of genuine terror. He said we were a team. He said you'd never actually fight back, she wailed. He miscalculated his cargo. Becca, I'm the one who handles the heavy lifting, I told her before hanging up. Minutes later, my mother Linda was at my office building, intercepted by security before she could reach my floor. I met her in the lobby, the cold marble reflecting her frantic, disheveled state. You've ruined Kyle's career, Jordan. And now Becca is a mess. Is this the justice you wanted? She hissed, her eyes darting around the crowded space. I stood tall, my arms crossed over my blazer. Justice is a balanced ledger, Mom. And right now, your side is still in the red, I answered. Linda grabbed my wrist, her voice a desperate whisper. We can fix this. Just drop the lis pendens so we can sell the boat and pay you back slowly, she pleaded. I pulled away, my gaze unwavering. The boat is evidence now. And I don't do payment plans for thieves, I stated. Back at my desk, Casey showed me a series of frantic texts she'd intercepted between Kyle and Grant, the notary. Kyle is threatening to pin the whole forgery on Grant if the state board opens an investigation, Casey noted, pointing to the screen. I leaned in, a shark-like grin touching my lips. Perfect. They're already eating their own to survive, I said. I picked up the phone and dialed Kyle directly, knowing he'd be desperate enough to answer. The lis pendens is just the start. Kyle, Grant is already looking for a lawyer to trade your name for his freedom, I told him. Kyle's breathing was heavy on the other end. His confidence shattered. What do you want? Jordan? He croaked. I want the truth in writing. Or, I want you in a jumpsuit, I replied. The internal collapse was nearly complete. The fluorescent lights of the conference room buzzed like a trapped insect as I sat across from Grant, the notary, whose sweat was visibly soaking through his collar. I placed my laptop on the mahogany table, displaying the flight manifest from my Singapore trip. This log proves I was at 35000 feet when you supposedly witnessed my wedding signature in Chicago. Grant, I said, my voice echoing in the sterile room. Grant looked at Kyle, who was slumped in the corner, his eyes bloodshot and frantic. I told you she'd track the metadata. You idiot, Grant hissed, his composure disintegrating. I'm not losing my commission over your family's $1,200,000 heist. Becca burst into the room, her hand on her stomach, followed by Linda, who looked ready for a funeral. Jordan, stop this interrogation right now. You're traumatizing your sister, Linda screamed, her voice cracking. I didn't look up from the screen as I pulled up the IP log Casey had refined. Trauma is realizing your own mother provided the backup phone for a fraudulent digital signature. Mom, I countered. I turned my attention to Kyle, who was trying to edge toward the door. The district attorney's office is on standby. Kyle. But I might reconsider if I get a full confession on who initiated the hack, I stated. Kyle froze, his face a mask of desperate self-preservation as he pointed a shaking finger at Linda. It was your mother. Jordan. She gave me the password and the recovery codes from your desk, he shouted. Becca gasped, her eyes wide with a betrayal she hadn't anticipated. Kyle, you promised we were doing this for our future? You said it was your idea, she wailed. Kyle sneered at her, his oily charm completely gone. I'm not going to jail for a makeup artist and a boat-obsessed old man. Becca, I'm a businessman. And this was a bad investment. He spat. Linda's face turned a ghostly white as she sank into a chair. I only wanted to ensure the baby had what you already have. Jordan. I didn't think you'd actually call the police on us, she sobbed. I leaned in, my shadow falling over the forged deed. You didn't think I'd apply the same logic to my family that I apply to a $50 million shipping contract? I asked. I slid a sworn affidavit toward Kyle. My pen ready. Sign this. Admitting your mother provided the access, and Grant forged the seal. And I might let you walk out of here without handcuffs today, I offered. Kyle grabbed the pen before I could even finish the sentence. Don't do it. Kyle. We can still fight this, Robert shouted as he entered, looking every bit the broken man he was. I stood up, the power in the room shifting entirely to my side of the table. Fight what? Dad? The fact that you spent $195,000 of my money on a boat while your wife was stealing my home? I asked. Robert stopped mid-stride, his jaw hanging open as the weight of Kyle's signature hitting the paper finalized their ruin. It's over, I said, my voice a final, cold period. The only thing left to discuss is how fast you can pack your bags. Becca's screams of traitor echoed down the hallway as I walked out, the confession safely in my clutch. I felt the air clear for the first time in weeks. The judge adjusted her glasses, her eyes scanning the confession Kyle had signed like a death warrant. The court finds the transfer of the property at 405 North Wabash to be null and void due to systemic fraud and forgery, she declared, her gavel echoing through the silent room. I sat beside Marcus, my spine a straight line of cold logistics, watching my mother Linda sink into her chair as if she'd been struck. You have 48 hours to vacate the premises before the sheriff's department executes a formal eviction, the judge added, her voice brookings no argument. I didn't cheer, I just noted the time. Already calculating the cost of changing the locks and deep cleaning the betrayal out of the carpets. In the hallway, Becca lunged toward me, her face a mask of tear-streaked fury. You're really throwing a pregnant woman onto the street over a piece of paper. Jordan? She screamed, attracting the attention of every lawyer in the building. I didn't flinch, meeting her gaze with the same neutrality I used for a delayed cargo shipment. I'm not throwing you out, Becca. I'm reclaiming what you never had the right to touch, I replied. Maybe Kyle can help you pack. Though I hear he's currently busy explaining his business practices to the state board. Kyle didn't even look at her as he walked toward the elevators. Already a ghost in his own life. Robert approached me last, his shoulders slumped and his voice a ragged whisper. We have nowhere to go. Jordan. The boat dealership won't take the Liberty back for even half of the $195,000 we paid. He confessed. I adjusted my blazer, feeling the finality of the bridge burning behind me. Then I suggest you sell it for whatever you can get and find a modest apartment far away from my zip code, I said. Linda tried to grab my hand, her eyes pleading for a mercy she hadn't shown me. We're your parents. Jordan. You can't just erase us, she wailed. I pulled my hand away, my voice as steady as a heart monitor. You erased yourselves the moment you treated my life's work like a family inheritance, I concluded, turning my back on them for the last time. 48 hours later, I stood in my empty living room, watching the movers carry out the last of Becca's designer luggage. The apartment felt vast, clean, and finally quiet. The locks are changed, and the security system has been reset with a 24-character encryption, Marcus said, handing me the new keys. I felt the weight of the metal in my palm, a physical manifestation of my restored boundaries. The $195,000 is gone, but the peace of mind is worth the deficit, I murmured. I looked out at the Chicago skyline, the city lights reflecting off the windows I once again owned. The house was mine, but the home they'd occupied was gone forever. And for the first time, I was perfectly fine with the vacancy. I sold the penthouse for $1,250,000 and moved to a quiet cottage in the suburbs, trading marble floors for the honest grain of oak. The $195,000 my parents squandered became a lesson in the price of freedom rather than a debt of despair. I spent my evenings in a garden. I planted myself, digging roots into soil that belonged only to me. Far from the toxic demands of a family that saw me as a bank account, I realized that while you can't choose your blood, you can absolutely choose the boundaries that protect your soul. Now, I look at the photos on my mantle and see a different kind of family. One built on the loyalty of friends like Marcus and Casey. I don't wait for apologies that will never come, because my peace isn't dependent on their remorse. True power wasn't in the deed I reclaimed, but in the silence I finally granted myself. I am Jordan Miller, and I've learned that the most important logistics to manage are the ones that lead you back to your own worth. Thank you for watching this journey of reclaiming my life and my home. If you believe that justice and self-worth are worth fighting for, even against those closest to you, please subscribe to join our community. Your support helps me share more stories of resilience and truth. Remember, your future is yours to own, and nobody has the right to steal your light. See you in the next story.